You can see a story of America that's been hiding in plain sight, the story of the African American role in making democracy and making America what it is. You're going to see things like objects from Harriet Tubman, one of the greatest liberators in this country, from Frederick Douglass. You're going to see contemporary objects from entertainment figures from Lena Horne to great singers like Marian Anderson, and you're going to be in an interactive museum that invites your participation as a visitor. So this is not a passive way to interact, and you're going to see encased in a building that's just an extraordinary architectural achievement. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Here, this slave cabin, which we were able to acquire from Edisto Island, South Carolina, and please understand that when we actually took this cabin apart, on site were the descendants of the enslaved families and the descendants of the slave owners together. They are excited to see this in place. If you think of the energy of the people who lived in that cabin, and if you can imagine and close your eyes at night, and you can imagine their vista down this hallway is the paradox of liberty, with Thomas Jefferson, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. On the back side of that cabin, we tell the story of freedom after emancipation. These documents continue on down the wall. Right behind that cabin is the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment.
The first object that you see when you enter this space is that house right there. It's a log structure. It was built by Erasmus and Richard Jones in what is now Poolesville, Maryland, what was then Jonesville, in the 1870s. In the 1860s, it was their plantation where they were enslaved, Ice-to-Chapelle Plantation, in what is current-day Poolesville, Maryland. And what it provides for us is a tangible symbol, a huge tangible symbol of this period, of this first generation who's moving out of slavery, building for themselves, striving. So it's a symbol of promise, but it's also a symbol of limitation, right? That is also enwrapped in this period, the beginning of Jim Crow.
The rail car is right here against the civil rights movement. Of course, it was a segregated car, and it's interesting to look at it from that point of view and to walk through it from that point of view. Right next to it is the guard tower from Angola prison, which was known as one of the most violent and challenging places to be incarcerated. And what that does is protect the a theater, which is a little more adult theater that deals with the kinds of techniques of violence that are used to oppress people.
So if you think about the era of the 1960s, a lot of the images that you'll see in terms of protests are people carrying picket signs. And so the exhibition design is used to reflect that sense of what are the different issues. There's a black feminism picket. There's a picket about class and consciousness that talks about the middle class. There's a picket about the Nation of Islam and religion and black liberation and liberation theology. And so these were many different ways that people could go. We also talk about the influence of black power on other ethnic and cultural and gender rights movements. And so Chicano power, the Puerto Rican Young Lords, these are some of the stories that get infused throughout these galleries.
And just imagine a couple of thousand people coursing through here talking about the History Gallery, talking about what they've learned, talking about where they're going to go see next.
The Oprah Winfrey Theater. And we just heard about the acoustics, and hopefully you can hear me well enough. And one of the goals of the museum is to have donor opportunities like this one, where Ms. Winfrey has sponsored this construction. 350 seats, and you'll notice that the panels around the theater mimic and take that pattern from the Corona outside. So it's a reminder, it's subtle, same angle, different lighting, different tone. The vertical lines that you see below that are also an acoustical design where it helps with the absorption of sound. So if you listen, there isn't a whole lot of echo, right? That's the absorption that you're getting.
Cultural Expressions really looks at African Americans, takes that sort of general gaze on some of the ways African Americans and also groups outside, black groups outside of the United States, practice and express culture through food, through music, through dance, through stylings, fashion and hair. And it allows you to look at sort of the the origins of those particular practices and traditions. A lot of them come out of historical moments like slavery and the civil rights movement. You know, things like the Black Power movement helped fuel the movement for African Americans to go back to wearing their hair naturally, and the afro and things like that. We also take a nice view on African American foodways. One of the things we're really interested in making sure we wanted people to know about cultural expressions as it relates to African Americans is that it's very diverse. There's this full spectrum. It varies depending on where you live, what time period you were born in.
So African American music arguably is probably one of the foundational elements of African American cultural expression. And one of the things that we want to do in Musical Crossroads is really tell the story of African American music from the point of view of not looking at it as a hall of fame, but as a story of artistic expression, self-actualization, social protest, and community building. So you walk into the exhibit and you're greeted immediately by Chuck Berry's Cadillac, which is fun and great and wonderful, but we interpret it through the lens of this is a Cadillac that he drove across the stage at the Fox Theater, that same theater that turned him away when he was a child. So we're always complicating what people might know or think they know about African American music and interpreting it from a new lens. Some of our iconic objects also include the mothership. We have Marian Anderson's ensemble from the 1939 concert on the Lincoln Memorial. We tell our stories through the lens of genres, but we tell stories about racism, oppression, self-actualization, community building, and really encourage visitors to think about music in a new way.
Really one of the unique moments in this city that you can get this kind of panorama for the public. And we felt that that was a great way for you to come to the end of this experience and also have a moment to reflect. All the way through the project, as you go into the history galleries and you go through the curatorial content, we also give you moments to kind of reflect.
You're going to see it on September 24th. The corona is hung, the landscaping is done, the Oculus is built, the contemplative court is almost finished. So the big parts of what it takes to run a museum are in place. So the biggest thing left is the installation of the objects, and that's happening as we speak.